I feel like a pretty good introduction and start to the story would be explaining our Tebow adventure.
Thing. Yeah. OG roommates.
Yep. So if we could preface it kind of, so both like right before we came into college, right before we started classes, we had this thing called the Bridge Program where all the incoming freshmen would come in. And I remember being nervous for that.
I was terrified.
Dude, like coming in, I don't know anyone in the class, you know, but I mean, we remember our class was like highly touted.
Yeah.
Like,
we had that little group chat, I remember we were talking, but like I didn't have a face to put with any of the names.
And we were all from like all over the place. And I hadn't been around a lot of people from like other parts of the United States. And, you know, I knew about Nick and his Team USA stuff and even Caden too.
Yeah.
And then I remember walking through the doors of Tebow, and I thought it was cool because I'm like, dude, this is so nice.
Brand new building.
I'm finally out of the house. I got my bag with me. Go upstairs, and because it was like those double rooms, right? And then because you were already up there,
I got
Mama and Papa.
I got there like 3 minutes before you. I remember that. I was nervous as hell too.
Yep, nervous. And I walk in, and I remember, I swear to God, like I was like, dude, I didn't get put with a baseball player. I was like, you got to be kidding me right now.
I remember you came in, all sweaty there. I am Zach Taylor.
I'm Zach.
I was hella intimidated because you were hella big. Like I remember all that, but that was a good time, bro. But yeah, that was an overwhelming time for sure.
And it's funny to think though that like from that point on, you know, and how our friendship has kind of like flourished and developed. And now to think like where we're sitting
doing this right now,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But being able to talk it and always like, that's a good introduction story.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, to see where we come from and you know, being from such like different places too. You know, I grew up in Sherwood, Oregon, like, and then you're coming from Fremont, coming from the Bay Area. Like we're from
Worlds
two
away.
different worlds. Still on the West Coast, but two different worlds.
Baseball brings us together. It's beautiful.
Absolutely. But yeah, and then moving forward, right? So a lot of things happen in college. I think like a lot of learning experiences for both of us. I mean, I know you and I especially, like we talked all the time, like a lot of highs, but also a lot of lows too.
More lows than highs in the beginning, I would say.
Way more lows, 100%. Especially, I think we can kind of tap in, you know, those first 2 years for us too. And I know you had a really hard time. I had a hard time too, but you were, I think our difference was, you know, I had some certain people that I was behind with KJ and Logan in our first year. And then, you know, Rutch come in and he was catching and, you know, KJ still being there.
Yeah.
But you got some opportunities to play early on, right? And how was that for you? And how was that transition? Like, do you think you were ready when you initially came in?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I don't know if you remember the first game. So somehow I started opening day of 2016, right?
Yep.
Played Ball State, and I'll never forget this. Ball State, we faced Zach Plesac, nephew of Dan Plesac, domed my ass up, right?
Yep.
I'm tripping. I get the 9-hole spot, and that was probably the worst game I ever played in my life. I don't think I told you that, but like I almost cried in the dugout. I did so bad because I struck out twice. I missed a sign. I missed a ball in the outfield, and I didn't get a bunt down. So like after my second strikeout in like the 7th inning, I come to the dugout. I'm like, what's going on? I went to Kevin Kai's and I go, what's going on? Like I've never been this bad before. My head's racing. My heart's like I can't stop. Like I can barely breathe at this point. And I'm literally about to like cry. And I was like this. And like from that day, I was like, I can't play college baseball. Like literally in my head, I go, I'll never play college baseball ever again. And it was literally like that was pretty much the start of like understanding like how to be stronger mentally. Because I mean nobody could play like that where you can't breathe and all that kind of stuff. And luckily, well, unluckily, I don't remember also, I sliced my eye open that next day.
Oh, dude, I remember.
On the mirror.
Do you remember on the mirror? We were rooming. We were rooming.
You were rooming with me?
That was crazy.
I got stitches that day.
Yes.
Crazy. So I didn't play. I mean, that wasn't the reason I didn't play, but I didn't play that day, and then I didn't play for like another like 2 months. And I just remember like the demons creeping my head from not playing. Like, you know, didn't get a hit in Arizona. You know, you don't get it. You don't play that next series. You don't play that next series. We go to USD, and this was like when I started comparing myself a ton. You know, Trevor's hurt, right? He doesn't play for the beginning. He gets his first start at USD. He gets a hit. So there's a freshman who got his first hit. You get in there. You smoke a ball. There's your first hit. And now I'm here like, am I never going to get a hit? Like, what if I never get a hit? What if I never play again? Kind of thing. So that was just like you said, like there's just so many more lows than highs when you have to start the year out like that. But, you know, like I said, it has to kind of happen.
Absolutely. And I think that transition, like, I think there's something to be said, especially the program that we were in. I mean, there's so much talent across the board. And we're all young, too. You got to remember,
Babies.
like, we're just coming out of high school, you know, and I think touching on what I did with, our recruiting class, you had some guys that have kind of played all over the world, played with Team USA. They have like that national exposure. And I know you and I specifically, like we didn't.
Yeah.
And that was something that I think people can understand is that like where I was from and what I did with baseball, I was playing other sports, but it's like, I couldn't just get on a plane and fly somewhere one weekend and then fly somewhere the next weekend too. And that's just not how the family dynamic was, kind of thing. And I know it was the same for you. Like we're playing local, just like area ball stuff.
Yeah.
And then you get opportunities as far as like area codes and things like that. But it's difficult. And then you get into college, it's like, man,
it's a different world.
You're dominating when you're growing up. You get into college, those first 2 years, growing periods. But I think, and you can answer this, and I know for myself, like, you have to go through those points where you really struggle because you find yourself at the bottom.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Because you finally get to a point where you're like, dude, I hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
But now I got to go up. And like, you really start to have an understanding of like, okay, well, how do I utilize my resources? And I think, for both of us, like, we talk about meditation and guided visualizations that we did with T-Gram. I'll let you talk on that first, but that was big for both of us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And especially leading us into that junior year for us, which was, clearly a big year, won national championship. But I think we did it the same time, you and I.
For the first time?
I know there was a group of us. There was a small group because T-Gram kind of came up to us. He's like, we need to do this all the time. After meeting with Alan.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I remember that meditation. I remember he told me the same thing he told Trev. Like, you can go in there and fall asleep if you want. Like, I didn't know anything about it, but like kind of going back to what you said about hitting the rock bottom. Like, yeah, I agree. Everybody has to hit rock bottom for that because you need to realize that you need to do some changes. And I think that's what Case did so well. Like, he would kind of push you to hit rock bottom, like make you kind of like feel that. So he would push you down so you get back up. And I think, as you saw, there'd be some people who didn't get up.
Right.
Like there are people who hit rock bottom, just figured that was it, or they can't change, and that was it for them. But I think we were fortunate, like we were in that good culture to where like we hit that rock bottom and then we're able to get up because you have so many people supporting you. Like we had that good kind of team camaraderie where like, nobody's going for each other's necks. Like we want everybody else to do really well. But yeah, going back with that meditation, I think that was, introductory. It was super weird because like I said, we were talking before, like for me at least, when you talk about meditation, you think of like, cross-legged, like kind of this kind of stuff, like super strange. But for not to be dramatic, and I'm sure you can agree with this, but like it changed my life. Like meditation literally changed my life just in the fact that like you can kind of start understanding your thoughts and like taking advantage of them. And, those like random moments that like that I had like freshman year, like the heart beating, like you can't even see sometimes, like those are controllable. That's not just something that you're doomed with, which I think was like really special to know that you can control these like bad feelings in the moment.
Yeah, and like I think going on top of that, I really started to learn like you start to develop a lot of body awareness when you start meditating.
Yeah.
And a lot of meditation, like you can go about it in different ways, but just the idea of taking some time to focus on your breath, visualize whatever goal you're trying to do. It doesn't even have to be baseball related. Like that can help you so much. And you start to get a sense for like, how you feel and the direction that you want to go and how to handle yourself. Like, especially what we're doing, like playing at Oregon State, a lot of people there, every game is a big game, no matter who we play. It doesn't matter. I think we can agree some of those Portland games, those midweek games.
Oh, like, they were huge,
Those were more high stress than the weekend Pac-12 series.
Absolutely.
So I know for me, like it just helped. I had so much performance anxiety, in general.
Oh, absolutely.
Which I didn't even know what that was until I started to dig a little bit deeper. Talk to Alan, and he was a great mentor for me. I know when we met him, our sophomore year at USC. But yeah, I say just like anything, you got to be consistent with it. Just like how we train, like it started to make sense for me. I was like, man, I need to do this every day because I value how I feel. And if I can kind of help start to control this and really calm myself down in the moment, like I'm all in. But I also was in a point too, and I always tell everyone this, and I think you can understand because you had those trials early on where you like really struggled and the self-doubt creeps in and the confidence is, rock bottom. And it's like, okay, well, how do I get back to that? Start meditating and you start to build confidence in yourself, and it's over time and you have powerful thoughts and powerful visualizations. And like, I think something worth noting that a lot of people don't understand is when your brain, you can't tell the difference whether you're doing something, you're visualizing yourself doing something and you actually doing something. And dude, when Alan told me that,
I remember that.
Blew my mind. I was like, so you're telling me, like, I was like, that is literally how I'm going to play on this team. Is because I look around, right, and I'm like, first round pick, potential first round pick, and it's like, I'm not as talented as some of these guys. So how do I help even the playing field, or how do I personally be successful with my skill set that I'm given? Because my skill set's good enough. I'm not saying it's the best. I'm not a first rounder, but it's like, how do I make the most of that? And for me, visualization and meditation for sure.
Yeah. No, it's actually funny you talk about like the self-esteem you get from meditation. I remember like one of the biggest things I hit, because I would do a meditation, I've done it more recently, and like a self-esteem pack. So you go through like all these lessons, whatever. And the thing, so I've always had like self-esteem issues, baseball and kind of like personal life. And I think the biggest thing they talk about in meditation is like, when you're meditating, you focus on the breath, and then all these thoughts pop in your head. And they use this great analogy. It was like, you have this blue sky that is like your peaceful brain, right? Your peaceful mind that you want to get to. And then these thoughts are going to always creep in, and they're like the clouds that kind of like go in. And you can always look past those clouds, but for some reason, we always want to get caught up in those clouds, caught up in like thoughts, We take thoughts for more than what they are, They just kind of float in your head, and then we take that for like, that's us. I'm this thought now that's popped in my head. And just kind of be able to like distance yourself from that thought and just get back to that blue sky. Like that literally transformed my life.
Absolutely. And yeah, like what you were just saying, we make thoughts facts. And they're not necessarily like, we have so many thoughts a day. And that's why, like, again, the idea of not just, body awareness, but also aware of your thoughts and actually what you're thinking. I mean, we have so many subconscious thoughts every single day. And kind of what you do with those, and the ones that you pay attention to and the ones that you don't pay attention to, it can either really help you or it can be super detrimental.
Yeah, absolutely.
So again, it's important. That's why meditation, I just like, and I don't even think right now, we're not even talking about this from necessarily baseball aspect. It's like anybody can utilize meditation. And it's not like, it just takes time and consistency like anything else. I know it was something like the idea of visualization in first person and third person. I had a hard time to start. I remember Gret vividly, like the first couple times he was trying to picture himself in the batter's box, he couldn't do it. Or he had, our minds, I think we always revert to, negative things in general. And we're negative minded by nature.
Biological.
It's biological. And that's just part of that is like our fight or flight response, and we're always going to see the worst case scenario or the worst outcome in certain situations.
So we're prepared for it.
So that's why, again, meditation and visualization is so important, because like it is literally, it's a skill to see yourself being successful in whatever you're doing, but you have to work at it consistently. And it's baby steps, and there's some days that are better than others, just like anything else. I think the other thing that gets people kind of off track is maybe they start to embark on this meditation journey, and it's like, or they're trying to visualize, and it's like they can't, it's like, oh man, I'm seeing myself doing bad. But it's like, that's okay. And telling someone that's
embrace
okay, they're
that,
like, embrace it. It's going to get better. You just have to be consistent with it.
I think it's people want instant gratification a lot of times. Like they'll do it 5 times, they don't get it, meditation's not for them. Or like they'll do it for 3 days, and then one day they don't feel good, and then they don't want to do it anymore. It's like, people want to feel good so they can meditate, but it's the other way around. Like, you want to meditate so you feel good. Like, it's the chicken before the egg thing. And people just, it's like I said, it's instant gratification that it's got to be process oriented. It can't be success oriented. It can't be all those kind of things.
Absolutely. And now going off that process, oriented, that statement right there. So with meditation or visualization, is that something that you still incorporate, like whether it's your pregame routine, postgame routine, like, and especially like how has that helped you kind of in the course of pro ball, and just maybe like kind of go into that, that transition from college, right? Get drafted by the Indians. It's an exciting time. I remember we were up at training tables, right? We were all hyped for you. And so going forward, right? And we all know pro ball, like, it's kind of a different realm.
It's a grind,
It's a grind.
Different world.
It's a day-to-day, like, you have to basically be locked in, even if you have a 7 o'clock game, right? Like, from 12 on, you're starting to prepare your mind and your body for what you're about to do. Get to bed late, and then you do it all over again. So how does that look like from a mental perspective? How do you kind of prepare for each day?
I mean, especially out here, I'm staying in Corvallis, like I'll start every morning with meditation, and that's something that Trevor's really good with. Like he'll start all of his days with meditations, and he's better than me. He does it twice a day. But yeah, just getting kind of one in, that kind of sets the tone for the whole day, I think. Like, just achieving a goal too, like kind of the same page, like making your bed. You know, if you go meditate, you can really bounce into another task and keep knocking those out. But yeah, just kind of setting your brain and your mind kind of like a neutral path going forward. I think that's like super important. In season, I would dedicate, the 20 minutes. That's why actually when I called you, I was in my clubby's office. I would always go there to meditate. So, I mean, it has to be part of your routine. And it's not even for baseball. I kind of gear it more towards like life stuff with like the, build your confidence, because then it'll spill over to baseball. It's not, I really don't think you do baseball stuff to spill into your life. It's you build your life stuff, you build your core of how you feel, and then it'll spill into all different aspects of life.
Absolutely. And I think that's good. I think that's really important to note, right? I think as baseball players, we've been doing this thing for so long, and now actually being a professional, like, in your respective sport, I see so many guys, and I've been there too, and I know you've probably been there, is like we get this idea that we're defined by our sport.
Yeah.
We're defined by the game of baseball, and I think that's really important. What you noted is, like, you got to separate the two. Like, you're using meditation as a tool. Yes, it's a benefit for baseball, but really it's more importantly, like, it's for your mind, getting your mind right,
Absolutely.
Making yourself feel good, as simple as that. And that's a carryover effect into your sport and into your job and what you're doing, right?
All the relationships you have and all of your friends and everything,
That's powerful, man. Well, now, speaking about just like athletes in general, I know I think there's been like a bigger platform as far as, when I think about certain athletes and actually using their platform to advocate for, mental health things. I think of like Simone Biles, and especially coming off this last Olympics. And, that was a situation that I think it was hard for a lot of people to understand. And I got this idea that, the media would portray it as, okay, there's kind of two halves to this thing. There's people on one side that think like, oh, she's being soft, and like, how could you not represent your country? And, you waited 4 years to prepare for this moment. You're letting everyone down. And then there's people on the other side of it that are like, well, man, like, the twisties are a real thing, just like anyone else. Everyone goes through these trials and tribulations, and, Simone isn't any different. But I think people view her, there's people over here that are like, that, like, why is she doing that? It's because, like, they see her in a light, and I think we put athletes on pedestals, and especially her, right? She's the most decorated female gymnast of all time. So it's like she can never mess up, or she can never fail. She needs to be perfect. But I think it's more powerful that she used that platform.
Absolutely.
Like, think about, like, I always tell people, like, how much courage it takes in that situation to really be able to speak up and be like, you know what? I'm not okay, and that's okay. And that's that's the simplest message I got from that, and that was so powerful for me. And it, like, honestly, it, like, kind of almost makes me emotional a little bit, because I'm like, our stories are different. I could never be in her shoes. I don't know exactly what she went through, but it's relatable because what I've dealt with in college and what I continue to deal with as far as, anxiety and certain mental health things. It's like, man, that's powerful. That speaks to me. And we're on totally two different stages in different platforms and different respective sports, but we have similarities in that, like, man, you're not okay, and you're actually talking about it, and you're using your platform for good. Because I'm hoping that was one of her goals, is like, you reached me 100%, the fact that we're even talking about it. And so I think just being able to shed a little bit of light on that, and I would love to hear your perspective. And
I think people who are at the top of the game, like you talk about Simone Biles like that, like she's obviously, like you said, the most decorated. And I feel like people who aren't athletes, who don't do things at that high of a level, they just assume that if you're the greatest, or if you're great at something, what is there to worry about?
Facts,
you've got everything in your life taken care of. You got all this money. You got sponsorships. You got people who adore you. Like, you don't have a reason to feel bad. Like, that blows my mind. First of all, because I think people who say that are obviously very insecure about themselves. So they just try to make a different situation what it isn't. But I mean, every single human being is a human being at their core still. And for her to say, take a step back, I mean, that's, like you said, that's powerful. Like, she's not okay, and that's okay. And that's just relatable to everybody across the board, no matter what you do. Sports, life, that's relatable. And I think that's good for her, She doesn't need to have this fake facade and carry through for her country. Like, she needs to deal with herself first. And then by taking care of herself, it'll propel her even further. But people are so short-sighted. They want that instant gratification again. She's supporting our country kind of thing. Like, she's letting everybody down. It's like, if you're a real patriot, you should be supporting her decision. She's at the top of her game, and if she's at the top of her game and she's saying this, then we should all just be backing her in that.
Yeah. And I think people get it twisted. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, yes, Olympic athletes, they have it hard because they're preparing basically for, you know, a few events in a short period of time, but they take years to prepare for these events. And you're competing against the best of the best in their respective sport. So like all those external pressures, especially what she feels like, that's hard. It weighs down on you.
Yeah.
And like talking about, you know, I know you look up to Osaka, right? And you've talked about her highly, and just like her, you know, actually being able to take breaks and feel like, you know, just stepping away from her sport and saying like, you know, as far as talking to the media, taking a step away from that. You know?
No, I mean, absolutely. Like, I think what we were talking about was like her rise to fame was so quick, so she's getting all of this stuff pushed on her. And, you know, I support what she does. She's very, you know, she's quiet, but she's very calculated in everything she says, right? Like, so she took that break from the media because it affects how she plays, you know? Like, she doesn't want to have to juggle all these things before and after she plays, and then she gets blown up for that. Like, and people are saying that's their job, but it's like, no, it's not their job. Their job is to play the game, you know? All these external things, if that affects them, then let them have that. But, I mean, she has her breaks. She takes a step back. I mean, she deserves that.
Absolutely. I really do. Absolutely. Now, I kind of want to tap into, right, you moving forward in your journey. Okay, we're going to kind of bounce back and forth a little bit, but it'll tie in. So both, you know, Osaka and Simone, we just happen to talk about, right, both minority athletes, you yourself being a minority athlete. And I think this is important, kind of the structure here, right? It's like, I'm a white male, you know, I came from a predominantly white community, and you came from a community that, you know, very diverse. And I just think this is such a cool dynamic, especially when you think about the sport of baseball, right? And you think about at the professional level, the amount, like, I know growing up, like, the best way to preface this is like my version, I told you this early on right before this, is like, you know, when I look at a professional baseball player, I used to think of like a white male, like, you know, 6'4", big, like early 90s type of like Mark McGwire kind of thing, you know? And I think part of that is because, you know, wherever we're from, you know, whatever race we are, we need, like, there's something to be said about seeing someone that looks similar to you. Right?
Absolutely.
And I think that's an issue in itself of being, you know, an Asian American specifically. Okay, but we've seen guys like, you have your Otanis, you have, you know, Ichiro, but these are guys that are well known, but, you know, they weren't born in the States. And so that percentage of, you know, baseball players, Asian American baseball players, that are especially in the league, you know, it's small. It's very small. So I think there's something to be said about this, you know, this window of opportunity that you're in, like, coming off a great season, best season you had, right? And really, I know the biggest thing moving forward is like, okay, well, you know, Kwan, he needs to slug a little bit more, like more doubles, more home runs. And you had a year where you really showed that. And so now, you know, I know it's pretty exciting. I remember freaking calling you and freaking out because you know, I'm on the Twitter feed and I'm like, oh my God, Kwan broke the 40 man. And I know you were surprised too when I called you. So I mean, that's freaking awesome. But now, right, you're at a stage where, okay, you're preparing for your next season. You're going to be in big league spring training. But going on from there, right, it's unknown still. So how has that been for you? Is this offseason any different than maybe last offseason? And I know, you know, COVID throws an entire wrench in things, and now there's a lockout, and there's all these different external factors, but also things that you can't control too. So like, how are you going about this season preparing?
I think it's so, I understood how it was going to be, like, you know, just a big wave of emotion, you know, people hitting you up and all that. But what I didn't really know is, like, I didn't expect kind of like the ego boost it would give, which I think is like dangerous. Because, you know, you have all these people, they're hitting you up like, dude, you did it, you made it, you know, like, you've done all this, you're 40 man, you're in a big league spring training, you know, like, so-and-so's in front of you, you're going to make it, you're going to be a big leaguer, right? And all that's great. And I talked about you this season about staying neutral. Like, it's so hard to stay neutral when you have all these people congratulating you. Like, in the true, tangible aspect, I've done nothing. I have done nothing. I'm not a big leaguer. I have not stepped foot on a big league stadium and played one single inning of baseball. But I'm getting all this ego, and I think that's where people can, like, fall into bad habits. Like, you get all these sponsorships, you know, new agency, all these, like, these big toys, you know, you think you've made it already. You haven't done anything. I think that's like the biggest thing I've been trying to hone in on is I haven't done anything yet. Right now, this 40-man thing is all status. Like, it's great, and I'm super proud of myself and everybody who's helped me. I'm super happy about it, but like, for people to, you know, say you've made it, I think is dangerous. I want to just keep going forward, keep the head down, and just really like prove people like, yeah, like, I think I am a big leaguer, but let me prove it first before you start getting all these congratulations, you know? Like, I was telling you during season, you called me, and I was doing really well that time, and I told you, right? Like, I'm struggling to stay neutral. Because in baseball, at least for me, is such an emotional game.
Absolutely.
Like, you do well, you have a 4-4 game, and you ball out, you're on the top of the world. Nobody can tell you anything, right? You're eating the best dinner ever, you have the best night of sleep, and, you know, baseball's the best sport in the world. You go 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts, you know, the steak you had tastes like ass, you know, you tossing and turning all night. So, like, staying neutral for me is important just because, you know, when you stay high and when you're low, you want to get back to neutral. But when you're high, people don't think about going back to neutral.
Oh.
They just want to ride that high.
100%.
Because, I mean, it feels great, you know?
Yeah.
But I think that's kind of going to that conversation and then coming back to this, I just want to stay as neutral as possible right now.
Absolutely.
Just stay consistent with the work. Don't get too caught up in really anything and just keep going.
And I kind of like what you said about being neutral because, right, absolutely, people are like, well, you know, like, Kwan, why wouldn't you want to ride the highs? But, like, the higher you go, right, the idea that you're going to obtain this, like, you're just always going to go up and you're going to go 4 for 4 every game, that crash is going to be even harder.
Exactly. That's,
you know
that's the exact verbiage I use too.
And you got to and I try to explain this to people, like, okay, you think about, like, your batting average, right? For example, like, it's going like this all year. It doesn't matter how well you're doing, it's still going to change. It's going to change every single game. Even by a little bit, it's still going to change. So it doesn't matter to look at something like that. And that's the same feeling of, like, okay, the idea of being neutral. Okay, low lows happen. High highs happen. It's that same perspective, but now that is going to help you ride that even keel. And I think you're going to also enjoy the game a lot more. I know I did, especially toward the end of the season. We had a few more conversations because that resonated with me. I'm like, man, because I remember calling you, and I was the first one to say it too. And, like, that's how you get all that, you know, you get all these external things that are said to you about, like, when you're doing well, all this praise, right? People associate that as good, which it is.
It is,
but in perspective, because you can kind of let that feed your ego. Just like anything else, right?
So easily,
and your confidence can go through the roof, and then you have one bad thing that happens to you, and then it could shatter.
You're like, what happened? You know, I was big dog, and now you come crashing down to earth, and it hurts so bad. Like that. Like, I love that way you say it. The higher you are, the harder the crash is going to be. The harder the fall is going to be.
And that's a hard concept, and I think it's learned more, right? Like, in a situation, we've played a lot of baseball. We've had a lot of different experiences playing all over the United States and things like that. And I think that's something that's good as far as, you know, getting across to, like, that younger generation too. Like, you know, the kids that we see now that, you know, they're going to be big leaguers. And so that's why I think even talking about that perspective is so important. But now transitioning off of that, right? I know, you know, we've talked about professional athletes and their platform. So now how do you envision yourself, especially the place that you're in, right? Because your platform it's starting to grow. It is. Like, whether you like it or not. And I kind of tapped on it earlier, like, being an Asian American and knowing that there's such a small percentage, you know. And what does that look like going forward? And do you think it's necessary to be able to, you know, talk on issues like what we're talking on and being able to explain your story? Because, like, what I said earlier, right? Okay, what was my ideal when I was younger of a professional baseball player? Well, someone that looks like me, right? But also the percentage of, you know, white athletes in professional baseball, that's a bigger percentage than Asian American athletes. So it is important, right, being able to use your platform, and because think about you when you were younger, right? If you could see yourself now, I think younger you would probably be pretty proud.
You'd never believe it.
You know what I'm saying? And you even said, you're like, oh, man, I never thought I was going to be here. I'm just here because I love the game, and it's like, you know, I've been going about. So again, what I'm getting at is you moving forward, right? And being an Asian American athlete, like, how can you use your platform, and what do you think that kind of looks like, kind of moving into this next phase of your life? If that makes sense. I know that's a pretty broad question.
I appreciate you asking that. I'm really passionate about this, so I hope I get to say this right. But I'm passionate about it because I think a lot of my early confidence issues came from not being able to relate to anybody playing baseball. You know, like, I'm growing up playing baseball, and who do I get to look for baseball? You know, maybe Ichiro wasn't born in America. You know, that's it. That's it,
Right.
really. Like,
especially in our time period, because we didn't have Ohtani.
yeah, and like you said, we're looking at the Mark McGuires, the Barry Bonds.
Yes.
Everybody has to hit home runs, and I'm
Yep.
here hitting singles, just running. You know, like I'm not a big leaguer.
Right.
My mom told me that the first day. I said I want to be a baseball player, and she goes, do something like realistic. You know, like think about what you want to do for school. It's like, but I want to play baseball. So it's like, I had that low confidence because just think from the day one, nobody expects, a Asian American in general to be a baseball player, but also like the size stature. I think it's super important to be able to like look at, have a role model or just anybody you can relate to and be like, hey, if he's doing it, why can't I do it,
Right.
And literally as I grew up, I kept looking for some kind of role model that I could really like latch onto, and I could never find it. And that negative validation, affirmation just kept pushing me down. And thankfully I had great people around me and I just kept playing baseball and kept doing it. But deep in my heart, I never believed I'd be a baseball player. And I think now that I'm in a better state of mind and, a better position, like, I think that's terrible. Like, I want to be that role model now to do that. If I can just impact one or two people, that's all I want, because growing up, there was nothing for me. And I just want to be able to just inspire, really. I want to be able to inspire, motivate. Like, there's a lot of great Asian athletes out there, too, that get pushed out of it. They get to high school and their parents are the same way. Their parents don't see Asian Americans or Asians in general. Right. So they go, I want my kids to be successful. Athletics is not the way. Let's get them into sport, or let's get them into, math, chess, science, all of these like stereotypical ones. Yes. And I know those same kids, they don't want to do that. But because their parents think they know better for them, they're just going to go with it. Thankfully, I had great parents who just kept me going through baseball. But if we can just get Naomi Osaka is going into that now. Yep. Like, she's being a great asset for, Asian Americans. Like, I talk about, even past sports, I talk about Simu Liu. You know who that is? The Shang-Chi guy?
Yeah.
I mean, Asian actors before were kung fu doctors, right? And he's coming out, and he's obviously, Asian American Marvel superhero. Yeah. But if you watch the movie, he's in San Francisco. He's a normal dude, he does valet parking, like just a normal dude, Like, he's not playing into the Asian stereotype. No accent, nothing. No, like, making fun of his eyes or how he says stuff. Like, Ken Jeong, Mr. Chow, hilarious, right? But people like him because he says funny things in an Asian accent, right? Yes. Like, that's fine. There's no issue with that at all. But that's not Asian American identities. Because again, speaking off of that, I think, it was sad, but on all these travel teams, I'm the one Asian. So now all these Asian jokes are coming out, just terrible, inappropriate jokes. But then that's what you think, like, okay, I'm being diminished to only being Asian. People see me as Asian first, I'm not a baseball player. So you kind of grow up kind of pushing yourself down. Like I remember this story. There was thankfully another Asian kid on this team finally, right? And he strikes out. And he comes back to the dugout and he goes like, oh, I guess I don't see very well, like, and haha, and like everybody's laughing. And I'm like, dog, like what? Like, this kid's from Las Vegas. Right. Like, he's an Asian American, but he's appealing to other people's sense of humor for Asians because that's what's going to get him accepted. That's what's going to get a laugh.
Absolutely.
And I've done that too. Unfortunately, like, I admit I've done something like that too, just to get like a laugh and validation from other people. But it's like, there's got to be more out there. And I think it's trending in the right direction. Like I said, Simu Liu, Tim Chantaranzu, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's another guy. He does not play on his Asianness. He's just an Asian American. He grew up in Southern California. He was on Wild 'N Out. Right. Like, it's trending in the right direction. And I just want to be part of that movement, just uplifting, not even just Asian Americans, but just the underdog, just people who are classified and categorized early and think that's their only path. Like, there's so much more. And yeah, I just want to be part of that movement moving forward.
Well, and I think just like being able to summarize that, right? Like, from my point of view, especially being a white male, like, I know my perspective has changed like drastically from where I am now and where I was in college. And just like, I remember coming into college and I was uncomfortable being around, different ethnicities just because I hadn't been around. And that's not necessarily my fault, but I remember feeling almost like a little bit of guilt in a sense because I felt like I was like, man, like almost like I'm not supposed to be here kind of thing. And then I started to think, right, and I start to have best friends that they don't look like me or they're different ethnicities, and I start to realize I'm like, oh man, like how I felt uncomfortable early on in college, like maybe that's how Kwan has felt for his entire life. But he's just grown accustomed to certain things. And now actually being able to chance, like what we talked about with your platform, right? being able to speak out and speak and in you, I think I've seen you grown so much as a person from when I saw you freshman year and met you freshman year to where you are now. And you talk about like being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
I've seen that, like, you know, 100%, you being able to grow as a person. And I think that's why, like, when you work on yourself, and you talked about that, like really being able to work on yourself, on your mind, you know, that positive self-talk, like what it can do for you.
Yeah.
And no wonder things have, all this like goodness has snowballed into other aspects of your life, especially with baseball. That's why, you know, you going off this last year, that's fine and dandy, but I think people need to understand, it's like, well Kwan's like really taking care of himself. Like he's got his stuff together. And that's just an after effect of that. And I don't think people look at it like that. Like they're like, oh man, he figured out a certain swing change or whatever it may be. It's like, yeah, we're always trying to make ways to adjust, you know, in our physical sport. But a lot of it, people don't understand how much of it is your mindset.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
now, right? And again, going like what you just said on just Asian American athletes in general. And we talked about using your platform. What does that look like for you? And it's like, well, now you're comfortable in your own skin, right? And what you said when you were younger, you didn't have anyone. You were desperately trying to find someone like a mentor that you could look up to. And there wasn't anyone there. And now it's like, you talk about, you're not just playing baseball for the game or necessarily just to get to the big leagues. It's like, you have an opportunity to make impressions on people. People that you'll never even meet. But you talk about a true purpose, right? Because, I mean, what's one of the goals, and I know we've talked about this, and I know this from, you know, like what we've talked about from me. It's like, well, before I leave this earth, right, I'm trying to impact as many people as I can. And that can be in such a little way as possible, just like what you touched on. And I know we're similar in that, right? And we come from two completely different worlds, but that's why it's important to talk about this topic. And especially with minority athletes, and especially coming from a white male, too. It's even important, I think, you know, in the community, like especially in the community around here, right?
I absolutely agree,
And to be able to understand that. And like diversity, it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
And there shouldn't be specific ideals on what certain athletes should look like, and especially professional athletes, because it's all across the board. That's why now I know I've grown up. I won't judge. You know, I won't judge a book by its cover.
You can't.
I don't care how big someone is. I don't care how small someone is. It doesn't matter. Because I know I have best friends that are half my size, man, and they ball out. You ball out. But a lot of that, I can see it now in your play, and when I look at videos and when I look on, I'm like, dude, he looks confident, he looks comfortable. But that's something to be said because you work on it. You know what I'm saying? It didn't just like come overnight. It's not like you did really well and like, oh man, I just flipped a switch. It's like, no, man, this is consistent work that people don't understand. And I think hopefully that can be a takeaway from this, you know, for other people watching, is like, man, there's a bigger purpose to things, you know, and working on yourself, it takes time. It's a hard freaking road. It's you know, it's up and down, your progress, but it's so worth it once you start to have a little bit of success and you start to learn some things, right? And you don't take certain things as serious, and now you can really build, and you talk about actually being able to do something, you know?
That impact. I just want to level the playing field, really. Like, I feel like if I just had that one role model, then it would be in this kind of same playing field. Like, I wouldn't have to learn to love myself in my own skin kind of thing. Like, just making that kind of impact and just giving everybody a fair chance. Like, that's the goal, really.
Yeah. And I think the last thing that I can leave us off on is, you know, what you were saying, and being able to move forward and with your platform, like being able to, you know, inspire that younger generation, and that you know, that's so powerful. That's so powerful moving forward. And again, I appreciate your story. I appreciate you being able to show some vulnerability, because I think that's what people need to see, you know?
I agree.
And especially the position that you're in, everyone's like, man, Kwan, balling out, sunshine and flowers, man, and everything's all good. And it's like they don't know what it took to actually get there.
Absolutely.
Kind of thing. So dude, 100%, like, you know, you deserve this opportunity. I'm excited for you to embark on your journey. You know what I'm saying? But again, thank you for being here, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I love you, brother. I love you forever, man. You know it.
Sir.